There's something about visiting and exploring the Mississippi River that inspires. The culture and history of a place is experienced through its artistry and craftsmanship, allowing you a glimpse of a small river town or the inner workings of a metropolis along the river. River Travel Media is exploring people who call the Mississippi River home. Come for a visit and find out more at rivertravelmagazine.com. Talking with Andrew Wanko, wrote the book Great River City, How the Mississippi Shaped St. Louis. I haven't had the chance to page through the book like I like to page through a book, but I did have a chance to see it digitally. Andrew, I'm looking forward to this book coming out, so it looks like it'll be a great coffee table book.
Yeah, it's been a thrilling project to work on. Usually when you see a book about the Mississippi River, it tends to look at the river across its entire length. You got 2,200 miles of river, and it'll pull stories from all up and down that length. That's a really cool way to think about the river, but we wanted to flip that on its head. We wanted to look at how the river has interacted with one single city across its life. So the book is called Great River City, How the Mississippi Shaped St. Louis, and it looks at just that. We're looking at the big moments from St. Louis's history, the stuff you'd expect to find, but then we get all the way down into topics like sanitation and racial and ethnic conflict, entertainment, all these different ways the river has made a mark on the city of St. Louis. The goal was to show people that even if you don't spend nearly as much time as people did on the river back in the 1800s, or you might think it's just water flowing past, it's still tied to your life in a lot of ways you might not realize.
You know, I live on the Mississippi River as well, but I'm up north. I'm in La Crosse, Wisconsin. It's pretty cool to be here, but it's also weird to hear that people that live here haven't been on the Mississippi River, and I'm assuming that even there that there's many people, thousands of people that have never even had the chance to be on the Mississippi River.
Yeah, I mean, St. Louis has half a dozen bridges across the Mississippi River, and I timed it last time I was driving home. It takes about 30 seconds to drive across one of them if there's no traffic. That's, for a lot of people, that's about the extent of their experience with the river. You know, maybe they'll go down to see the arch once a year with their family and look out on the river. But for the most part, we don't really spend much time pondering how it seeps into our daily lives. But when we look a lot closer, there's a lot of really interesting ways that the river is still very vitally important. It's still a lifeblood of our economy, and still touches our lives in a lot of ways.
Let me ask this, how so?
So, I mean, going all the way back to when St. Louis was first founded, the Mississippi River has always been our source of drinking water, and it still is. And the book has a pretty interesting chapter about what drinking the water in 1800s St. Louis used to look like. It was horrific. Be glad you're alive today. But, you know, it's our source of drinking water. It's our source of sanitation. Again, economy is huge. St. Louis still ships a ton of different things on the river, but it's the whole reason that our city was here in the first place. But then you have other things, you know, like segregation and division. St. Louis is certainly a city that has always struggled with these sorts of issues. East St. Louis sits on the other side of the Mississippi River. The Mississippi formed a very clean boundary line for all of the industry and all of the things nobody in St. Louis wanted to deal with. They could push it across the river into Illinois. East St. Louis today is commonly talked about as one of the most distressed small cities in America, and that has historic precedent that goes back time, you know, years and years ago to when St. Louis was first interacting with East St. Louis. The river is part of that story, and so that's how this book looks at these different stories. The river has some different ways it creeps into history.
So I'm sure that you've probably found a lot of really cool stories and a lot of really interesting things that piqued your interest. Do you have a story or perhaps that, you know, keeps reeling you in, something that you wanted to find out more about even afterwards? My
absolute favorite story in the book is the story of Bloody Island. Back in the 1820s, it was common for St. Louis's gentlemen, the sort of wealthy socialites of town, if they felt they had been offended, it was common to challenge another man to a duel, possibly to the death. And the place where this happened was a little island in the middle of the Mississippi River called Bloody Island. Since it sort of popped up in the middle of the river, since it wasn't controlled by Illinois or Missouri, it was sort of considered free game where you could go do whatever you wanted to. These wealthy St. Louisans would get in fights over the silliest, smallest things. One of the most famous duels that happened on Bloody Island was between Thomas Hart Benton, who later became a Missouri Missouri senator, and his rival attorney Charles Lucas. Benton had called Lucas a puppy in the newspaper, which is those are fighting words there. And Charles Lucas challenged him to a duel. They actually went to Bloody Island twice after their first duel. Nobody was killed. They went back out to the island and battled again, and Charles Lucas was killed on Bloody Island. So it's this really bizarre story, and it's hard to imagine that there was ever a time when that was a normal thing that would happen. All of St. Louis's citizens would go out on the riverfront and watch these duels. It was the entertainment of the day. Pretty incredible.
The book is called Great River City, How the Mississippi Shaped St. Louis. How do we find your book, Andrew?
Amazon, or if you happen to be in St. Louis, this book is coming out alongside an exhibit we're opening about the Mississippi River. The exhibit is free to the public, so if you happen to come down to St. Louis, you should stop by and see the exhibit, and you can grab one of the books at the gift shop on the way out.
Experience the Great American Road Trip and take a ride on the Great River Road. Explore the people, places, and culture of the Mississippi River. Visit rivertravelmagazine.com.